All right, Chris Popper here in Bangor. I'm joined by Dr. Marc Gousse down in Bar Harbor. And Dr. Gousse, school's scheduled to start on September 2nd. First of all, are we still in all set for school to start on September 2nd?
Yes, sir. We're ready to go. In-person learning with students and staff, 5 days a week at all MDI RSS schools.
All right, so there is not a at-home option this year.
No, not for MDI RSS schools. There is no virtual academy, no remote option. We discussed that extensively with our board, put that communication out to parents and staff. We were not planning for a virtual academy. We have not staffed for a virtual academy. We do not have funding for a virtual academy. So if a parent or student chooses not to return to an MDI RSS school, they have two options. They may homeschool. They have to register for the state, and that's through a process through the state, or they may seek a placement through the virtual academy, which is through the state. The state has online options, and that's not through our schools. We don't work through that process, but those are the two options available for parents. And I will also add that the state does not require us to have a remote or virtual option at this time.
Okay, so you're expecting everyone, and hopefully everyone will come in on Thursday, September 2nd, ready to go for the 2021-22 school year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reality is, Chris, if you look back last year, our kids, our staff, our communities did a remarkable job. We were in school, elementary, for most of the year, 5 days a week. So our kids and our staff, they've been knocking it out of the park and doing a great job.
All right. The one big thing that everybody needs to know is what are the masking requirements? Obviously, federal law mandates the fact that if they are going to be on the bus, that they're going to mask. What are the requirements for being in the school?
Yeah, Chris, it's pretty simple. And I don't want to agitate anybody because people's thoughts and feelings are theirs. There's no question. But we're a public school. Public education is compulsory. And when we come to a public school, we need to serve all of our students and everyone equally. We're wearing masks. We followed the science from day one. We were one of the first, if not the first, schools in the state to pull the plug on March 13th.
Right.
How did we do that? We listened to scientists at the Jackson Lab. We've worked with the Down East COVID-19 Task Force. We've networked with Hancock County superintendents. We work with medical professionals daily. We follow the CDC. We look at data. Our decisions have not been made in a vacuum. They've been grounded in science, in data, with multiple people at the table. And it has served us very, very well, which is why I would submit to you the MDI schools have really been ahead of the pack. And we've been able to be in school a lot more this past year than many, many other schools and districts across the state, if not the nation. We're following the science. We're wearing masks.
Okay.
No question, no option. We are wearing masks inside. All students, all staff, all visitors that are pre-approved, no question, no exceptions. Outside, masks are optional.
Okay. Wearing masks, obviously they can take them off when they eat.
Yes.
And in terms of, are there going to be mandated mask breaks? I think that's been a concern of people that, oh my word, my child isn't able to take their mask off. I mean, they're at least during the beginning fall part of the school. I mean, last year you guys were very good in terms of having classes outside and trying to limit inside activities when possible.
Yeah, I don't believe we need to mandate mask breaks. Our teachers and our staff and our principals have done an incredible job. If we have to get to a place where we have to mandate breaks, I would see that probably as a singular or working with an individual. Our staff and our students have the latitude to let us know when they need a break. They've been very judicious with that. They've been very efficient with that. They've been very creative with that. I have implicit trust in our teachers and our staff and our kids because they've done the right thing all along.
Okay. So all extracurricular activities are planned. I know that we started high school sports yesterday. There were no masks necessary for football and soccer, but volleyball, because it's an indoor activity, will be masked.
Yeah, so absolutely, Chris. I mean, you just captured it to a T. Those activities that are outside, masks are optional. Volleyball was indoors. I walked through the gym yesterday with my mask on. There probably were, I'm saying 20, 30 students there with their coaches. They all had masks on. And they were doing a great job, and they seemed to be generally excited to be there, be in school, be in their activity. I haven't heard from any student with a concern over this.
All right. And just so it's clear that if MDI is hosting Ellsworth in volleyball, Ellsworth will have to wear masks when they play at Bernard Parody Gymnasium.
Absolutely.
What will MDI kids have to do when they go to Katsiafikis Gymnasium? Will it be optional for them, or is that still to be determined? Because as of right now, Ellsworth is not needing to wear masks.
I mean, this information is changing daily, Chris. Honestly, I really want to make sure that I'm in line with Bunky Dow before I give that answer. I can answer very clearly when folks come to us, but I don't want to overstep because I know Bunky's working very hard with other ADs. And I would add too, the Hancock County superintendents, we meet weekly. We're very, very much a collaborative and cohesive group, but we recognize local control, or we recognize individual communities. So I think it's safe to say, Chris, whatever answer I give you, this is a fluid situation. What I say today will likely change tomorrow.
Right.
Undoubtedly. I mean, there's no question. This information, the updates we get, sometimes changes a couple times a day.
Okay. So, and I know that you say you meet with the Hancock County superintendents. I mean, we know that Ellsworth has said that masks are optional, except for in high traffic areas. RSU 24 is supposed to be meeting, I think, tonight to determine what their mask policy. But you're comfortable, and I know you are, with the MDI AOS 91 policy that masks will be required.
Yeah, let me add one thing to it too. This is not a fait accompli. This is not a take it or leave it. We're coming back with masks because medical professionals say this is the right thing to do. Masks are going to mitigate transmission of COVID. And equally important, people should be paying attention. Whether or not they're wearing masks on their own time or becoming vaccinated, COVID is not the primary, it's a concern. But the Delta Plus, and the Lambda variants are much more virulent, and they transmit much more rapidly than COVID. And even if you are vaccinated, you can contract and transmit. So I say all that, Chris, because we are going to implement pool testing in all of our schools.
That was my next question.
Pool testing is going to be the linchpin on our masking, because we're going to establish baseline data, which we did with our employee asymptomatic testing program last year. That tool allows us to determine whether we have any evidence of transmission or spread. We will evaluate that data. If the data is showing that we're safe and we're progressing well, it's likely that we could potentially ease our mask restrictions, but only when we have the evidence and the data to support doing so. So I want to make sure people know that we want to validate the good work. The people that did get vaccinated, the people who have done everything we've asked them to do all along, continue to do that because there is light at the end of the tunnel. However, the pandemic is not over. Anybody who thinks this is over, it's not over. It's far from over. We're in the middle of it, and we need to stay the course.
Explain how the pool testing will work for staff and students.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, our nurses are going to be on the front lines with this. If anybody would like information on pool testing, what it is, the best information I can give you is to go to the Maine Department of Education website, and on the search piece, type in pool testing. It'll take you right to a full page with FAQs, frequently asked questions, all of the mechanics. The short piece on this, Chris, is that if you and I are students who are in a classroom, we are a pod, if you will, we are a pool. We would, by the way, parents on this pool testing and students can opt in or opt out. There's no mandate to this.
Yeah.
We hope people will participate, but they have that option.
And it's just a simple nose test.
Right. We would self-swab. It all goes into one container.
Right. And it's not the one that goes all the way to your brain. I mean, this is just
no,
right.
No. This is simple swab.
Right.
It's non-invasive.
Right.
It all goes into a container. It goes off to the lab. Very quick turnaround, 24 to 48 hours. Then what happens is we get results back. If there's a positive, that's when we go back to that group, that pod, and we do our contact tracing or we do our further testing from there. So it's just a litmus test, if you will, to say, is there any evidence? If there is, we drill down. Pool testing has categorically been shown to mitigate transmission and mitigate outbreaks without question across the nation.
And if I understand this right, and again, everything's kind of changing a little bit, but if you are vaccinated and if you are masked and you come in contact with someone, you do not have to quarantine. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, Chris, is that you do. That's my understanding. And again, that's the latest from the CDC guidelines. Again, I would encourage everybody that follows this information, our information, it can change. And so it can be updated on a daily or weekly basis. But that is my understanding at this time as of August 17th.
And the goal of this is twofold. One is to make sure that students, staff, and faculty and everyone involved stays healthy and that they're able to continue 5 days in-person education.
That's why we're doing this, Chris. It all comes down to this. A year ago, everybody was wondering, how do we get kids back in school? How do we get people back in the classroom? How can we make sure our activities and our events is so important? We're at that place. What we're asking people to do is a continuation of what we've done last year to keep people in school 5 days a week for in-person teaching and learning. I understand. People may have some personal viewpoints on this, but it's a public school. And when we come together in a public place, we all have to do what is best for the greater good of all of our students and all of our communities. And that's just the way we have to move forward here. I would harken back, Chris, to think, let's put COVID over here for a second. All right. Let's think back to last winter at the height of the flu season. How many people were ill? How much did you hear about flu transmission? I have to believe that washing our hands, keeping our distance, and wearing masks had something to do with that. And I think the medical field would agree with that point.
Right. I enjoyed not being sick last winter.
Right.
You mentioned visitors to school. I know, especially at the elementary schools, they really rely on volunteers.
Yes.
what are we doing in terms of visitors to school and things like that?
So, I mean, I would like to believe that moving forward, as long as we're progressing in a positive direction, that we can have our volunteers back in the school. There's obviously going to be some requirements with that. One of the things we're going to want to look at is, are you vaccinated? Are you fully vaccinated? And then without question, anybody that comes into school is going to have to wear a mask. That's not an option. They'll have to do that. So I think too, with the visitors, we're going to have to get into a couple categories: essential and non-essential. Is it, I'm coming to perform a task and a service? Probably essential. We need our volunteers. But hey, you know, I'd like to, my child forgot their computer, and oh, by the way, I want to bring muffins down to their first grade classroom. We're probably going to avoid those non-essential visits. Meetings, open houses are probably going to be things that we'll have to look at doing differently. We'll have to see how the data progresses. It's going to be a day-to-day piece, and looking at the data for both our communities, Hancock County, and how we're progressing as a state.
I know that parent-teacher conferences, a lot of people really enjoyed doing those via Google Meets or Zoom or something like that. That seemed to work out better for parents and for teachers rather than meeting face to face.
Right. I mean, not everything that happened through COVID is a bad thing. We really haven't had the time to take a step back and say, you know, what are the benefits and the lessons learned from some of these things? So it's important that we incorporate those things that did work for individuals, for families and students, and we're taking a look at that. I think it's safe to say that we see this as a fluid situation, and I understand that kids, that parents, that staff want answers, they want parameters, and we're working really hard to give those, but we're also working really hard to make sure we don't get too far out in front where we have to come back and roll some things back. So we're committed to regular communications, but at this time, I think, you know, down the road right now, our focus is kids coming back, the first week of school, staff coming back. I will say, I'll give a quick example. So our traditional coming back to school, where we bring all of our staff together, we're not doing that. We're going to have our staff coming back in person to their buildings, but we're going to do building-based openings. It doesn't make any sense to me to bring a massive group of people into an auditorium or a gymnasium. We need to avoid things like that and look at, I don't want to say non-traditional, but things that we might not have done in the past. And there's value and capacity in those things as well. So
Right.
It's rethinking how we deliver those pieces so that we can honor some traditions, but we can also.
It's probably too early to say. I mean, I know parents are like, oh my gosh, my daughter's playing volleyball. Am I going to be able to come watch them in person?
I think it's likely that they will. Again, dependent upon what's happening in our communities. I mean, the key to all this is, look, in schools, you know, we have a very finite locus of control, if you will, what we can require kids, staff, and visitors to do. We certainly can't control what people do outside in their communities, but my observation is, as I go into the banks, as I go into Walmart or Hannaford or any other business that we would all frequent, I'm seeing more and more people bringing masks back of their own volition.
Right.
And so I think, you know, we can be really proud that the community is paying attention. And I think the answer to that question is, we want parents and visitors to be able to see kids in their activities. But there may be things that we ask them to do that they have to do and make a choice. If I want to go into that gym or I want to go into that, am I prepared to wear a mask? We had a board meeting last night, and we probably had somewhere in the order of 30 or 40 people in our auditorium. Everybody was wearing a mask. So I think in-person meetings, insofar as possible, we want to be able to do that, but we're going to have to make sure that we can universally adopt some protocols that we, whether we agree with them or not, that are going to keep people safe.
And just to reiterate, the decision right now to start with masks on September 2nd, well, I mean, we've started now. I mean, right now to wear masks. But I mean, when school resumes,
Yes.
we're not locked in until June 15th wearing masks. This is
That
something
decision,
that,
that could change the following week, likely one. And again, I want to be really, really clear here. I've been blessed as superintendent to have the support of my board, but I'm not making decisions in a vacuum. I make decisions based upon recommendations from nurses, doctors, the state officials, my admin team, and I bring those forward. Generally, without exception, they're pretty much unanimous. But the board at any time could say, "Thank you, Mr. Superintendent," and they actually took a vote last evening. There was a question about, geez, a board member very appropriately brought up the fact that we think the community may want to know how the board stands on this. And the board did take a vote specifically on the mask, and they were overwhelmingly supportive of that recommendation to require masking for all students, all staff, and all visitors. But again, I think that anything that we might do to change, to either loosen restrictions or, if we have to tighten things up, we're certainly going to be working through our boards.
okay. You're a member of the Down East COVID task force?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that they are very encouraging of is for people to become fully vaccinated.
Yes.
And, I know that I've recorded a commercial. I'm fully vaccinated. I'm hoping that people take the opportunity to be fully vaccinated. I guess the CDC is going to be, well, there's a full page ad in this week.
These are the people that take care of us, Chris. These
Yeah.
are the doctors and the nurses. It's a full page ad in last week's Islander. It says, "Get vaccinated." I don't know any other way to encourage people. If they're not going to listen to the doctor, the hospital, the nurse, those people are much more credentialed than I'll ever be.
Right. Well, and I mean, and I guess the CDC is now coming out with the recommendation or that everyone get a third booster after 8 months after your second booster. So, I mean, if you were vaccinated in March of last year, you're going to want to get that third booster in November.
I think, the approach has been encourage people or incentivize people even outwardly to get vaccinated. Maine, I think the rate is like 61% in the state. It's one of the highest in the nation. But the reality is, at some point, whether it's incentive or whether it's encouraged, I think you have to look at the landscape. And the landscape is unfolding as follows. The governor is directing that all healthcare workers be vaccinated. That's mandated.
Right.
Has that happened in schools yet? No. Could it? Possibly. So again, I would encourage people to do the right thing of their own volition because it's the right thing. So we don't have to get into mandates. I think we should avoid mandates at all costs, but we got to do what we have to do to keep people safe and keep schools open.
Right. And there are currently, there are vaccines that people are required to have to get into school. I mean, you have to have.
Chris, take COVID and put it aside. If our students, there's no exemption. There's no philosophical or religious exemption. That question has been called by the legislature. But the reality is, if this student is not fully up to date on the required immunizations and vaccines, polio, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, those types of things, they will not be allowed to come to school. And our nurses have been working with families since last spring to say, hey, just want to let you know. And
there's a new one that just, what is it, the meningitis
B.
Yes.
Yes. So, yes is the short answer. And, you know, our nurses are right on top of that. And we are working and will work with families. If they're making progress, they have a plan, we'll work with that. But if it's, no, I don't believe in that, or no, my child won't do that, then again, we're going to have to come back to those two options. And that is homeschool or a virtual school through the state virtual academy. We don't have that option here, nor do I foresee it unfolding. The only time a virtual option I see unfolding in our schools is if we are forced to close a school and go fully remote for the entire school or district.
Oh, God forbid again. Yes.
Yeah, but that's, I want to be clear. I don't want anybody surprised by this. This is not new information.
Right. And as you said, the goal all along has been to return to in-person 5-day-a-week education. And that's where we're at.
Yeah. I mean, Chris, we're not College of the Atlantic, but right down the road, my understanding is they're requiring all of their staff and students to become vaccinated. I don't know if public schools will get to that place, but it could happen. And I hope we can avoid that type of thing. And I hope people will do the right thing because they believe and know it's the right thing.
Well, Live Nation concerts, I mean, as well as that's the waterfront concert here in Bangor, effective October 4th. If you want to go to a Live Nation concert, you're going to have to show that you're fully vaccinated. And as you said, it's a choice of whether you want to or don't. And hopefully, you know, we'll see where we go with schools. But
Chris, you're old enough to remember, you know, when I was a kid, I can remember getting on airplanes where you could smoke. Adults would smoke, right?
yes.
When the no smoking ban was implemented on planes, you had a choice: either don't smoke or don't fly, right? You know, seatbelts. If we don't put a seatbelt in our car, we have an incessant beeping all the time. It's a tool. You know, there are certain we have to do.
No smoking in a car with children. I mean,
Right.
Science has changed, and that's where we're at.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
it is. It's where we're at, and you know, we have to do what we have to do for the greater good of all.
Okay. I'm sure you and I will be talking more, and as we gear up for school. This has gone on 37 minutes, so let's end here. But again, just in case you're joining us halfway through, effective immediately, if you're going inside to any AOS 91 school, you should be wearing masks indoors. If you're going to be riding a bus, you'll have to wear a mask. Outdoors, it is optional.
Any public transportation, Chris, that includes, you know, ferries and stuff. That's not a school rule. That's a CDC government requirement. All public transportation.
All right. Dr. Gauss, thank you very much. We'll chat soon, and have a great day.
Chris, thanks so much. Thanks for everything you do for the community. Appreciate it. Have a great day.